Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from the WealthyHomeowner.ca, Canada's authority on home ownership. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
And thanks for having me back on, Jim.
Ross, do we really have 1.3 vacant homes in Canada? Last week, the OECD released a report saying Canada had 1.3 million vacant homes. Carla in Surrey, BC asks, I read a Better Dwelling article that said Canada had over 1 million vacant homes. If this is true, can we see it at the street level?
Well, isn't that the problem, Carla? Isn't that really the problem? If that was true, you would see it at the street level. And this is the problem. When we have so many reports out there from so many different parties trying to get eyeballs to their platform so that they can make a dollar. And really this is where the major problem happens, because people start to believe all these narratives. They then go after our politicians to try to get them to change to resolve these so-called problems, so-called issues, which aren't really true. The politicians react, and you have negative outcomes for the public. So if someone came to me, Carla, and they said, okay, Ross, I hear that 1.3 million homes in Canada are vacant. Oh, I'm not going to laugh at them, but what I'm going to say is this. Well, who told you that? So you would have told me, oh, it was the OECD. So that's an immediate red flag, because what they're basically saying is, they're saying that the OECD knows more about the Canadian housing stock than the government of Canada does. So are you going to believe that the OECD knows more about what's happening in Canada than the Canadian government? I would assume that would put a question in your mind. Then you'd have to look at, there's 1.3 million. Okay, just for the sake of the argument, let's say that there are 11 million tradable homes in this country. Let's say that there's 12 million tradable homes for the sake of the argument, okay? So that means those are homes that can be bought and sold by an individual Canadian household or a foreign investor or whoever wants to buy them. The other homes can't be purchased because they're rental housing stock, designated rental housing stock. They're government-owned housing stock. They're nonprofit housing stock, all the different components of that part of the market. So that means the 1.3 million have to come from the 12 million homes that could be traded. Think about it. What they're basically saying is 1 in every 9 homes should be vacant right now. So we would say, okay, look at the house that you're standing in. Well, we know that one is occupied. So that's clearly not the home they're talking about. Look 4 homes to the right of you and 4 homes to the left of you. Are any of those homes vacant? Have they been vacant for the last year? Because the definition of a vacant home means it's not vacant for a month. It's vacant for a long period of time. So let's just go with the last 6 months. Have any of those homes been vacant for all 6 months? And odds are you're going to tell me, no, Ross, that's not here. And then you're also going to have a caveat. You're going to say, but. What about all those vacant homes in Vancouver? Okay, we're talking about a report that is stating 1.3 million homes in Canada are vacant. So even if the density is high in Vancouver in certain streets and communities where there are vacant homes, across the nation, in all these other towns and cities, this vacancy rate would have to be the same. It means 1 in every 9 homes would have to be vacant. And you only have to walk up and down the street of any single city in this country, and you're not going to go through 2 or 3 streets where you see that kind of a vacancy rate. In the town of Burlington, you wouldn't find a single street where was that kind of vacancy rate because it doesn't exist. I would also tell you, Carla, if this was true, there are ways for the Canadian government to measure this precisely down to the household.
There are. I'm just looking at this. The 2016 census said Vancouver had 25,502 unoccupied or temporarily occupied residences, and a 2020 study by CMHC said there were 30,000 in Vancouver.
Okay, and so you've got about a million homes in Vancouver. And were they talking about Vancouver CMA? Were they talking about Greater Vancouver? I mean, we've got all those extra questions to comment on. But that is still just a survey, Jim. The census is just a survey. People are responding back. They're not data points here. We would say, get the data. So what that means is I can call up Burlington Hydro here, and the guys at Burlington Hydro can tell me exactly how many homes are vacant in this city. So if I can do that in the city of Burlington, if I can do that with other municipalities across this country, how come the government can't do it? How come they can't just ask BC Hydro, Ontario Hydro?
I think they do
Hydro?
that in British Columbia because we have, at least Vancouver has an empty homes tax now.
Correct.
And they ask BC Hydro how much power is being used. Is it
right.
$30 a month? That usually means there's nobody living in it.
Plus the billing. Who's getting billed?
Yeah.
Who's getting billed for that hydro? I mean, I can go on and on about all the different ways that you can get an accurate assessment.
So, Ross, with all these vacant homes, are these potentially lower-priced homes, or people just waiting for the price? Or is it just multiple homeowners, and I like to be able to I own a house in Hawaii, I have a house in Vancouver, and a house in London, and I like to drop by them at various times, so there's no need for them to be occupied. Because the debate is always, well, if the homes aren't being occupied by people, you should be renting them out to help make housing more affordable.
And if it was true, then I would say, okay then, folks, there are about 15 million households in Canada. There's about 15 million houses in Canada. That means if 1.3 million are vacant, we have 1.3 million homeless families in Canada. Not homeless people, homeless families, which obviously is not the truth, because there would be riots in the street. So, Carla, this is just another example of someone skewing a narrative to try to create division in this country. And this division is what leads our politicians to make bad decisions on the housing file, which inevitably is destroying home ownership for a current generation of home buyers.
Mm-hmm. During the federal election, we had a number of parties saying, oh, we'll put a 25% tax on foreign home buyers. Well, first of all, talking to the local real estate people, foreign buyers haven't been part of the Vancouver market since 2017, the peak of the market here. And so you're going after a myth. They said, how many homes are being bought by foreign? Well, nobody, and especially with COVID, foreigners can't get in. So how could they come in and buy houses? And then what I have against a tax, and you mentioned it as well, a tax on foreign buyers doesn't do anything. Now, what if you're a foreign owner? Would that make a difference in the housing market?
Any home that is not lived in by a Canadian family makes a difference, which is why a precise number needs to be calculated, and why foolish numbers like 1.3 million, which means 1.3 million households are homeless, need to be debunked, and the people who foster these false narratives are called to the ground. And when you mentioned realtors, Jim, let's not remember that they were silent from 2013 to 2017. They stifled any discussion that it was foreign buyers. They hid the data. They hid how the average purchase price in Vancouver and subsequently the benchmark house prices all were inflated because wealthy buyers were buying more expensive homes. So before you ever listen to a realtor about anything, ask them why they didn't come clean when foreign buyers really were buying Canadian homes.
And then you have billionaire Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive, who was held for 3 years house arrest in Vancouver. She had 3 mansions to choose from that she could live in at any time. And when they said house arrest, she could go and shop anytime, go to the gym anytime. In other words, lead a perfectly normal life in beautiful Vancouver with virtually no restrictions whatsoever. To call it house arrest was a joke.
And how could we ever allow a wealthy foreigner to own 3 Canadian homes? I have no idea.
In Switzerland, if you're not a citizen, it's pretty hard to buy real estate.
Should be hard in Canada, right? Local realtors don't need foreign buyers. The only reason they need foreign buyers is to create house price illusion, because foreign buyers generally buy more expensive homes, increasing the average purchase price, which they call as the average set sales price, which they now are calling the MLS average price. It's just this whole scam is going to be revealed very soon, Jim.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, mortgage rates are rising off their historical lows. We have Robert in Oakville, Ontario asking, with the Bank of Canada announcing a pullback in their bond purchases, how and when does Ross see this impacting the real estate market?
Well, it's already impacting the real estate market, Robert. It's been impacting it since June of this year. Although it's really got nothing to do with Bank of Canada at this time. What I'm referencing is how mortgage rates impact what a buyer is able to spend when purchasing a house, which in turn becomes the average purchase price or average selling price, Robert. You see, back in earlier this year, I think we're about the end of February, middle of February, when the mortgage rates technically bottomed. So we really bottomed out where you could get a 5-year term mortgage at 1.39%. Okay, and that ended pretty much at the end of February. But what people don't understand is, because they're not working, haven't worked in a housing market, is that the delay that takes. So even though the rates are started to rise mid-February, anyone who had a mortgage pre-approval still had locked in that rate, and they probably had another 2 to 3 months to buy their next home. As long as they purchased their home in the next 2 to 3 months, they would have locked in those low interest rates. So what that means to us, okay, January, February, March, April, May. By the end of May, we would have expected to see an impact of interest rates beginning to rise. And then we would also know that come May, January, February, March, April, come the end of April, rates were already up to 1.68%. Now, those are ridiculously low rates, but when rates are this low, the change is radical to what a home buyer can pay. In other words, people are already into a situation, May and June and July, that they were going to be forced to be cut about 4% of their buying power. You have to also understand, Robert, that June the 2021, we had the OSFI 5.25% rate was fully enacted. So that meant the mortgage qualification rate, or the minimum income required to buy a home, to buy the same home, now was firmly established. That also meant that the workarounds of that mortgage qualification rate came into play, which is why you saw the average price being rumored as increasing in June and July, when really they weren't. What was happening at that time is that the group of buyers who were still active in the market. Remember, sales are already trending low now in all Canadian provinces. Beginning in June, sales are starting to go negative. The way that we measure them, you've got a group of buyers out there who are usually a little more well off because they're at the end of the trading cycle. So your last buyers to buy are your wealthiest buyers. This is why you heard the rumors about parents helping their kids out. Okay, another false narrative issued by Benny Talltales from CIBC once again. How do I know that Benny Talltales is telling a tall tale? Well, if it was true, he would supply the data that proved the book of business booked by his bank looked this way. Of course, he didn't do that. He just said, well, this is what it looks like. This is what we're saying. He didn't say, here's the proof. Same thing that he's did for the last 20 years, telling tall tales to help his bank out, the profits from his bank. In other words, his messaging was this, folks, when you heard that message. Okay, shareholders, yes, you're going to see that our first-time buyers were buying houses with help from their parents. So it wasn't just us, it was every other bank, which is false. Anyone who understands what banks get what share of the business from what category of wealth group in a housing market understands that the wealthiest generally at CIBC. So those people are in a better equity situation to borrow on a HELOC to lend to their kids. So all of these sort of things, Robert, are why you don't hear what the impact of the Bank of Canada is going to be. So first of all, we had to wait for this current flurry of wealthy activity to get extracted from the market. If you've been listening to House Street here, we've explained to you over the last couple of months that was already ongoing. We have watched home buyers spending consistently less with each passing month over the last 4 months, contrary to what you're going to hear everywhere else. What we are looking at is data, and the data, the way that our metrics measure it, because they're not just statistics, they are specifically designed to read a housing market, to give us that huge lead time that we have to when a market is turning over, clearly shows this. So when you're talking about the Bank of Canada starting to ease QE, and they're going to quit buying back the bonds, well, you have to understand that there's certain things that are already ongoing in the mortgage market that the Bank of Canada has no control over. The Canadian banks are now trying to extract more profit. So even though the Bank of Canada hasn't raised its rate, the Canadian banks have. And this is a common technique that they've used over the last 30 years to try to build their own bank's mortgage book in the third and fourth quarter of the year. So when the Bank of Canada is talking about scaling back their bond purchases, Robert, the actual impact from the Bank of Canada is going to be far off. The impact is already happening. The real world, for home buyers, the change has already been happening. And it started happening way back in February of this year. So then you've got a question, Robert. If I'm sitting here telling you the data shows us that there was a change in the effective interest rate. So we call it the effective interest rate. What is the effective interest rate? Well, that's what a home buyer, the lowest rate a home buyer should be expecting to get. Okay, so it went from 1.39%, Robert, to 1.64%, 8%, excuse me. That's a huge increase in the context of coming off a 1.39% low. And even now today, we're now at 2%. So the next group of home buyers that are going to go through the market, they're working with the 2% mortgages. Those people will be moving through the market in December and January of next year. So even if the Bank of Canada was to raise their rates tomorrow, all those home buyers who are out there searching for a home right now today, or have their home in the market, ready to trade up the property ladder, they have already locked in this, at the worst case, a 1.99% mortgage, which is why the mortgage qualification rate is really the thing that matters. And this is the beautiful part about the latest revision from the OSFI. because even when the Bank of Canada effectively raises their rate, you're not going to see a change in its impact on the housing market, because the OSFI allowed a spread to be built in, a 2% spread with the bank's posted rate. So we take all these things in context, Robert. I said the only concern that you have to have right now, any Canadian home buyer has to have right now, is that the Canadian Real Estate Association today started lobbying the new Minister of Housing. Immediately, all their social media accounts started attacking the new Minister of Housing. Your provincial bodies for a trade association for your real estate agent, they all attack the Minister of Housing. The Mortgage Brokers Association have all attacked the Minister of Housing. The Home Builders Association has all attacked the Minister of Housing, all within a couple of hours of him being announced as the new minister today. Will those false narratives that those trade associations are able to create impact changes to the home trading infrastructure? Will RSPs increase for down payments? Will they go to 30-year amortizations again? Will they try to fight to get the mortgage qualification reduced? All of these things will negatively impact your life if you're a home buyer, but the realtors are claiming it's a solution for you. The mortgage brokers are claiming it's a solution for you, when it's not. What you want is for the market to correct. You don't want the correction to be delayed for a couple of months because of a policy change that set off another series of trades for a 3 to 4 month period. You want to just let the market cool itself off, because we have already gone from 1.39% mortgages to 1.99 or 2% mortgages over the last 6 months. Just let it work itself out. If you agree with all of these people who are suggesting that this is in your best interest, Robert, they're not. It's in their best interest, because they don't want house prices to fall. They want house prices to rise. They want you to have an urgency. They don't want you to take the time. All of these people are working against your best interests. That is the thing that you need to understand when you hear people starting to talk about the Bank of Canada raising rates.
Andrew asks, how do I get a home inspection in a bidding war?
Well, first of all, you don't ask your real estate agent, because your real estate agent is going to tell you you can't. You should have already had things in place, Andrew, so that when you were going through a property, you had a building inspector on call who could have came over and inspected the house prior to putting an offer on it. You should have written some kind of a strategy into your home buying procedure to ensure that you didn't have to pay for this building inspection over and over and over again. Now, you shouldn't have had the freedom of doing this 6 or 7 times without a financial penalty, but 2 or 3 times you certainly should have had that built in. So there was no reason that you didn't have that, Andrew, because it's the huge amount of money that's trading hands for all the service providers that's involved in a home trade today. You need to have a strategy in place that allows you to get the home inspection done prior to the bidding war even happening, and at the same time allowing you to do that 1 or 2 or 3 times without you having to pay over and over and over again.
Pranjit asks, my agent didn't show me comparables that were the same as the home I wanted to buy. What do you do when an agent can't, and I would sometimes throw in the word won't, show comparable homes?
Well, first of all, Pranjit, what I would tell you is this, is that they're never going to show you comparable homes that have sold in the previous month, the previous 2 months, the previous 3 months, the previous 4 months. They're not going to be able to show you those. The only place you can see that is at a builder's trailer, where the builder has the same home on the same on lots lined up one after another. And you can buy any of those homes today for the same price you could have bought them for last month. There is where you get a truthful, comparable situation. You're not going to get it from a real estate agent. They're going to do what they call is a comparative market analysis, where they're going to say, supposedly, this house over in this street sold 3 months ago for this price. This house over in this street sold last month for this price. This house over in this street sold for 6 months ago at this price. So when we aggregate all this information together, you should be expected to pay this for this house because it's comparable. And we would tell you that's hogwash. You can have an appraisal done on a property. And what I will tell you is there has not been an appraisal done in the history of Canada that showed house prices rise in 31 days. There is not an appraiser in Canada who would be able to maintain his license to appraise properties, who appraised a property on the 30th of 1 month for one price and 31 days later for a different price, which is why you're never going to see true comparables, Frangie. What you need to do is you need to get an analysis of the neighborhood, which you're not going to get from your local realtor because they're as confused as you are. You need to have a critical assessment of the property that you're looking at. You have to look at it into the context of your home buying decision. You have to look at it in the context of everything that's available in the marketplace over the last 3 months and will be available over the next 3 months. And that's what you have to make your decision from. You're going to always make the wrong decision, Frangie. So understand that. You are always going to make the wrong decision. But there's nothing wrong with that as long as you were the one making the decision and it's not someone else.
Lee asks, I've been tracking homes in one neighborhood in Vaughan, Ontario now for 4 years. I get all the solds, but I can't find any price trends because home types vary so greatly. How does Ross suggest I track price in just this one area?
Well, there you go. You just answered the same question, Lee, that Pranjit had before you. You know, this is the problem. This is why no one can prove house prices have changed in 31 days. And I will tell you that we're going to be extending our offer to 90 days. We're going to give realtors 90 days. Now, we're going to make the proof a little bit more logical and a little bit more rational. They're not going to have quite the freedom that we can give them with 31 days, because we do know there are 2 cities in Canada from 1980 through till today where there were 2 periods of time where you probably could supply information that would, over 3 months, would suggest house prices changed in 3 months. Now, you would have to know where they are. You would have to know what city. You would have to know what year over the last 40, but there are probably enough to find 3. You're not going to find 5, okay? You can find this maybe 3 times over 3 months, I'm talking now, but you're not going to find it 5. So this is the problem that you're having, Lee. You're trying to prove something. House prices change in a month. That doesn't actually happen. And this is the problem that you're having. This is why the Case-Shiller Index in the States, a regression model, the hedonic price model. It's why that none of them work. It's why the OECD, which had brought economists from around the globe together to do the residential property index report, failed. Why they couldn't come up with a conclusion. Well, when you're measuring home buyers and you're not measuring house prices, you're always going to come up with the same wrong answer. And that's the problem that you're suffering from, Lee. All you can do, Lee, is understand it really doesn't matter. You have to look at your home owning situation. You have to see how your home ownership situation is going to be structured. And then you have to make some rational decisions on whether it's best to buy now or at a later date when prices are different. Whether prices are up or down, you're going to have to get some advice on that one.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us.
And thanks for having me back on, Jim.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross, he's glad to answer them. If you send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.